The great question to me, I guess, before I came to Malta was, what is a Maltese person? You're the product of basically every single generation of Mediterranean navigational powers, North African, Southern European, together. Malta. You may or may not have heard of it. Odds are, you know nothing about it. One thing you should know is that it is not, nor does it feel in any way, Italian. If the Mediterranean had a greatest hits album, Malta would be the first song. That's because all maritime routes in this sea have led, at some point or another, to these islands. What makes Malta unique boils down to their genetic makeup. A wonderfully blended stew of every invading force that over millennia swapped tenancy perhaps more than any other nation in Europe. Their language, thanks to the Phoenicians, is Semitic. Their identity, any Maltese person will tell you, is European, specifically heavily Sicilian. The direction they drive, unfortunately for most, British. Malta, the nation, is comprised of 3 islands. The heavily rural Gozo, the tiny middle island inhabited by 3 people Camino, and the island where everything goes down and 85% of the people live, Malta. Seriously, only 3 people live on Camino, but we'll save that island and Gozo for another episode. This time, it's all about the island of Malta. It's intricate, congested, rugged, molded by dense limestone that is the foundation for both the terrain as well as the sturdy buildings that dot it. The traffic is, well, unpredictable and frustrating on its narrow and veinous roads. The cities often are tightly crammed side by side, sometimes with no clear definition of boundaries, but for the writings on a wall or the feel they give. A few towns one might be inclined to peruse include Malea Bay, Golden Bay, which isn't too far from it, and St. Julian's. To me, however, Valletta is just that much better. Tiny and seemingly molded into the limestone, the capital is lined by a symmetrical grid of angled streets with slivers of the Mediterranean peeking out at the end of every road. Turn a corner, and there's another slender alleyway painted by multicolored galleria balconies. A rainbow array of flowers at Lower Baracca Gardens, beside more UNESCO heritage sites. Truly one of the great places to just walk. And of course, after a long walk, one must snack on indigenous foods. Enter the pastry dearest to all Maltese hearts, Pastizzi.
Flaky. It's like a cheese-filled croissant. Quite good. I do feel like it's a complicated thing to eat if you have a beard. So be warned, if you're a bearded fellow eating pastizzi, you might want to go to the mirror. Check it out. Otherwise you're walking around the street like a degenerate with flakes on your beard. Not a particularly good look. Beard check. Clear.
Geography is unforgiving. The crosshairs of a coordinate of where a specific strip of land lies on the planet has always determined the fates of civilizations. As easy a blessing, conversely, a curse. Perhaps no nation knows this better than Malta. For better or worse, a tiny strategic island placed smack in the middle of the most navigated maritime passageway in human history. Unsinkable aircraft carrier to some, a limestone bullseye to most. Across Grand Harbor, a hop skip on a Daisa away, are the three cities of Vittoriosa, Senglea, and Cospicua. Standing in these streets at different points in the past millennia means you'd have been witness to countless sieges, changing of the guards, and battles for control of the Mediterranean. From Phoenician ships to Axis bombings, the identity of these cities is fortified layer by layer with every passing hand. Walking through this maze of pathways today gives you a glimpse into real Maltese life. It's an eerily quiet stroll amongst polished limestone and concrete. Few people to be seen and perfectly ornate, seemingly unbothered by time. Almost as if getting lost inside a life-size diorama of a medieval labyrinth. This is one of your traditional dishes, right?
That's right. Rabbit, traditionally we call it fennec, is the sauté rabbit with fried garlic as well. It's a very traditional dish for us.
I'm joined for lunch at the marina by Paul Spiteri, economist, guide, and living, breathing Wikipedia page on Malta. The three cities, it's different from Valletta, from St. George. It's more of a local place.
Really, it is the place inhabited by the workers segment of the population.
I actually quite like it. You get more of a local feel. There's quiet alleyways. It's nice. It's very pleasant to just kind of sit back, unwind, sit at a cafe and just people watch.
The locals are proud to show their houses, and this is attracting a lot of tourists who do not want the standard 5-star hotels.
How is this area, this part of Malta, changing now, last 10, 15 years?
Well, actually we are flourishing at the moment. We have practically full employment. Unemployment is just 4%. The rate of growth is 7%, is one of the highest in Europe.
In most cities, when there's this sort of hyper-development, things get expensive, right? Usually locals will suffer. Rents, everything goes up. Is that the case? Are Maltese people getting pushed out of neighborhoods like Senglea and Vittoriosa?
First of all, one basic fact in Malta is that 80% of the Maltese own their property. So if the property prices increase,
right,
their asset holder will increase. So they'll be better off. But for the young, newly, couples that cohabitate or get married, then rents and even the property prices are prohibited.
The great question to me, I guess, before I came to Malta was, what is a Maltese person? What do you consider to be your strongest background ethnically?
Well, actually we are Mediterranean. We are very close to our close neighbor Italians. We had the English dominating us. English is our official language, but we are proud to have this unique identity because it's what makes us Maltese are our DNA.
Right. You are Maltese. You are not Italian. You're not English.
We are Mediterranean, but we do have connections with our old Middle East finishing, but it's a much smaller proportion.
You're the quintessential Mediterranean. If anybody has a, stake in the claim of what a Mediterranean person is, it would be you. But in football, you're rooting for an Italian team. Am I right? A Sicilian team.
We are divided equally here. We side with the Italian teams, and we side also with the English teams. And there is rivalry. I side with the English teams, but for Italian teams, I side with Napoli.
Napoli, okay. I mean, that's the one thing about football. Football is the glue that holds us all together. It is it's the uniting force of the world.
That's right.
In the hierarchy of the titans of Mediterranean gastronomy, from the Italians to the Spanish to the Greek, Malta's place perhaps doesn't resonate to many. That does not mean, however, that great things aren't being created here. Elaborately flavorful, unctuously satiating, supremely underrated concepts. You may not know it, but there's a pool of talent oozing out from this tiny nation, already making strides in Michelin star restaurants from London to New York. And trust me, they have a chip on their shoulder. Marvin Gauci is Malta's prodigal son, climbing up the ladder from award-winning executive chef to restaurateur, and ultimately Malta's official culinary ambassador and head chef to the president and prime minister. Safe to say, if there's a goals list, he's checked them all off. What do you crave as a chef when you get home?
Really, you just open the fridge and whatever is there when you're tipsy.
Whatever's available.
But I think if there would be bread, cheese, I think I would go more like...
Bread and cheese?
Yeah.
Like something that like, to absorb the alcohol.
Yes.
I hate to admit it, but when I've had a few, I crave something readily available, something very cheesy and fatty. Double cheeseburger from McDonald's. I'll just consume those.
Probably leave it at the side of the street, after a few minutes that I eat it.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying I feel like a good Christian afterwards. I'm just saying I want it, man. I joined Marvin for dinner at Caviar Bull in St. Julian, one of many fine dining restaurants in his repertoire. What does a Maltese person eat at home?
So at home we would eat baked pasta, we would eat rabbit, we would eat fish soup.
The fennec.
The fennec, that's right. We do like pasta with rabbit also. We do snails.
So what do you think is the biggest influence in terms of which culture influenced Maltese cuisine the most?
Well, it's very hard to say because we were ruled by so many rulers that they all brought something with them, and then obviously the people here, the indigenous people, they took a bit from it, a bit from everything.
The language.
And the language as well, and made everything their way, you know what I mean? We have the pasta side stuff that are more from Italy. The fish, obviously, because we're an island.
You're maritime,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
The bread and the way we do our ftiras and all that sort comes from more from the Arab world, you know.
Right.
So it's a big mixture. You know what I mean?
You yourself have reached a level that a lot of chefs would strive to reach. You are the culinary ambassador of Malta. You cook for the president, for the prime minister. How do you see Maltese chefs? Are Maltese chefs making a big impact around the world?
They already do. We have Maltese chefs cooking all over the world.
Right.
And they're really, really talented and passionate in what they do.
So they're sort of underrated at the moment.
For sure, absolutely. I mean, if you see all the competitions that happen here in Europe mainly, like Maltese chefs would go, like the Maltese Association of Chefs would go up there and compete, and they're bringing a lot of gold, silver, and bronze medals that I'm very proud of.
So what's next for Maltese cuisine?
What are the chefs looking for right now? And they're looking for pointing on ingredients and making an identity for Maltese gastronomy. And this means bringing the old dishes and reincarnate them into something new.
I guess I couldn't visit Malta on this show without the obligatory pandering to all of those fans of Game of Thrones. Yes, this is King's Landing, or at least part of it. Mdina is the old capital and currently stands as that impeccably clean, fun for the whole family medieval walled city. If you ignore the horses with carriages clopping around, find a few desolate alleyways, you can appreciate the shockingly well-preserved and enormous citadel seemingly carved into the limestone that once overlooked an entire island in the intersection of history's most important sea. Sometimes, perhaps, it's better to look backwards. To understand a culture by what wonderful confluence of genes gave you the people standing in front of you. Who they are, what they eat, what makes them smile, is always the result of every single accident you missed. How an island so tiny can be so intricately layered by every passing wave is the Mediterranean's happiest little accident. An accident called Malta.